This is Mariusz Błaszczak, the head of the Poland's Ministry of National Defence, officially handing over the first delivery of a batch of 24 used South Korean-made K9A1 155mm self-propelled howitzers. It's an urgent and key strategic purchase for Poland's largest modernisation programme for its armed forces in history. So why is Poland buying South Korean weapons systems? It's a complex answer. It's a story that goes as far back as 1991 and will result in Poland achieving military superpower status in Europe. However, we firstly need to go back to events on 27th of February 2014. On this date, Russian forces poured into Crimea, smashing through border checkpoints and seizing key government buildings in Simferopol. Initially they wore no insignia and were nicknamed Little Green Men. On March 14th, Russian separatist forces in Ukraine proclaimed the Donetsk People's Republic (DPR) and Luhansk People's Republic (LPR) as independent states. This move led to the war in Donbass in April between Ukrainian forces and Russian-backed separatists. Historians record this as the first phase of the all-consuming Russo-Ukrainian War. Crimea was officially annexed from Ukraine 18th of March 2014. Watching these events in 2014 was the Polish government and senior military commanders. They could clearly see the dangers of the conflict expanding and maybe even reaching the Polish border with Ukraine. Poland's ageing Soviet-designed military equipment ranging from rifles to tanks, although well maintained and often updated to Polish-specific requirements, this equipment remained relatively unchanged, even after joining NATO in 1999. Fundamentally due to budget restraints. However, it should be noted that Poland did make significant improvements to meet NATO military standards and battlefield tactics. The events of 2014 appears to be the main driver for a Poland whose economy was improving to begin the first initial steps to modernise her military forces equipment. One prime example of this is the development and production of AHS Crab 155mm NATO-compatible self-propelled tracked gun howitzer. It's a little known fact that Poland does not operate any towed gun howitzers. Basically, after the Soviets began withdrawal of troops in 1991, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, by the time they completed the withdrawal in 1993, they took with them 600 main battle tanks, 952 armoured vehicles, 390 towed artillery, and 231 aircraft and helicopters. They also removed approximately 1 million tonnes of ammunition. The Polish land forces were left with thousands of pieces of military hardware and equipment that was old and outdated. Interestingly though, a substantial amount of hardware and equipment was actually produced under Soviet licence in factories across Poland, such as pistols, rifles, heavy machine guns, rocket-propelled launchers and tanks. This was all part of the Soviets' massive weapons manufacturing system, allocating specific weapon production to mainly Warsaw Pact countries of Czechoslovakia, East Germany, Hungary, Poland and Romania. Outside the Warsaw Pact, Ukraine manufactured Soviet T-55, T-64 and T-80 main battle tanks. Today, Ukrainians are using their vast heavy weapons manufacturing and engineering skills to repair and upgrade Ukrainian forces' battle-damaged tanks. They are also repairing captured Russian trophy military hardware to be sent back to fight under Ukrainian army banners, although it seems unlikely that some of these captured examples can be repaired. The Soviet Union at its height of power spent 14% of GDP yearly on weapons production. Poland was selected to manufacture a range of small arms but also produce tanks in their thousands such as T-54, T-55 and T-72. Although many of these tanks were sold for export, Poland's land forces eventually operated over 2,500 1947 designed T-54 and T-55 with a relatively straightforward upgrading to 600 remaining T-54 and T-55 to a T-55AM Marauder variant in 1986 and 1,000 mainly T-72M and M1 main battle tanks. But the designs from 1980 and 1982 of this T-72 export version mainly remained unchanged, making them increasingly outdated against emerging Western designed tanks such as the ever developing Leopard 2. The Soviet tank designers, however, continued to update and modernise their range of Russian main battle tanks. As shown here, this is a Russian T-72B. It's received an armoured modification to a T-72B OBR 1989. It's equipped with the then all-new Contact 5 explosive reactive armour and composite armour on the side of its turret. It's during this period, at the very beginning of the 1990s, the first tentative steps to Poland's military modernisation began, heralding the beginning of Poland's journey to remove its legacy Soviet equipment and military hardware, paving the way to become an independent major weapons designer, arms manufacturer and exporter. Poland in 1991 watched and celebrated as the Soviet troops began the process of withdrawing from the country, painstakingly loading heavy armour, munitions and equipment onto thousands of rail cars. The process would take 2 years and saw the removal of some of the Soviets' most modern weaponry. The Soviet 20th Tank Division, based in Poland at the time, had for instance at least 350 T-80 tanks, which was superior to any other Polish tanks. Poland's forces in 1993 were left with vast amounts of mostly outdated Soviet equipment and heavy weapons, but maintained a strong network of missile and rocket launch systems, including the Scud launcher, capable of firing an 80 kiloton thermonuclear tactical ballistic missile. However, similar to Ukraine, Poland retained its heavy weapons manufacturing capability and workforce engineering skills. Poland still operated hundreds of T-55AM Marauder tanks and tentative-M and M1 main battle tanks as primary frontline battlefield defenders. Poland needed a better main battle tank. Financial constraints at this time steered the decision to significantly overhaul its fleet of T-72M and M1. The updated tank was to be called PT-91 Twardy, as seen here, conducting battlefield live fire and manoeuvres training. Confidence was high that PT-91 Twardy tank could be produced based on the experience of the Polish conversions of several thousand T-54 and T-55 to T-55 AM Marauder standard. Although the Marauder standard was a relatively straightforward conversion, specifically because the Polish manufacturer Homar-K had previously built under license thousands of T-54 and T-55 and had retained its tooling, line drawings and engineering skill base. Crucially, the T-55 AM Marauder received Polish equipment such as the Polish designed and manufactured Marauder fire control system and smoke grenade launchers. It was also fitted with heavy curved blocks of armour designed to hug and protect the exposed turret. These changes added a significant 4-ton plus increase in the tank's overall weight, resulting in the fitting of a Polish engine, an improved version of the T-54 T-55 V55 engine, designated W55 WAX, capable of producing 640 horsepower, replacing the 500 horsepower Soviet V55. It was the T-54 T-55 tank manufacturer Homar-K who later produced the T-72M and M1 and was awarded the contract to manufacture the PT-91 Twardy using the existing T-72M tooling. Importantly, on the PT-91, Homar-K installed a brand new Polish designed and manufactured dual axis stabilised fire control system, reactive armour, a more powerful engine, transmission and new automatic loader. This, following on from the successful T-55 AM Marauder, was another major step away from Poland's reliance on Soviet or Russian designed systems and parts. The PT-91 Twardy, although produced in relatively small numbers with 233 operated by Polish land forces, and an export success to Malaysia of 48 PT-91M with additional engineering variants, proved Poland had the capability of producing a good main battle tank. Realistically, the PT-91 Twardy, as good as it is, fundamentally, it's still an upgraded Soviet-era T-72 tank, and would likely to have no significant battlefield advantage against upcoming Russian models and variants, such as the T-90 and its variants from 1992 and the T-72B3 model 2011 from 2010. Beyond 2010, Russia continued to upgrade all its main battle tank models, including the T-80. Poland did attempt to design its own indigenous main battle tanks, with the tank manufacturer Homar-K producing a basic prototype model, PT-94 Gorel, in early 1990. Its turret design moved away from the traditional circular or oval-shaped Soviet designs. It instead featured a Western-type turret with vertical sides and a well-sloped front for increased protection. Not dissimilar to to the French Leclerc turret, or the British Challenger 1. To save on costs, the PT-94 would still heavily rely on a Soviet-era T-72 hull, but with significant improvements in overall add-on armour and transfer of equipment developed for the PT-91 Twardy. The project was cancelled due to Poland's ongoing financial constraints. Poland in the late 1990s was left operating several hundred practically obsolete T-55AM Marauder and less than 290 PT-91 Twardy. Poland in 1999 became a full NATO member. Warsaw needed tanks that met NATO standards and could be used as an armoured brigade as part of Poland's obligations to the alliance. Hopes of producing a domestically designed Polish main battle tank faded, and the idea was probably abandoned in 2002. Poland that year looked towards Germany instead, and once again, due to financial constraints, purchased 128 surplus ex-German Army Leopard 2A4s. The first batch of 53 vehicles was delivered between September 2002 and March 2003. The other 73 tanks were delivered by the end of 2003. Poland in 2002 withdrew from service any remaining T-55AM Marauder tanks. After a sustained period of economic growth, which began in the late 1990s, now showed Poland's manufacturing might, services sector, IT and tourism beginning to boom and showing signs of outpacing most European countries. In 2013, Poland had completed a streamlining of its state-owned military production plants, research centres and service facilities, finally erasing any links to Soviet-era singular manufacturing and development systems by creating a holding company called Polska Grupa Zbrojeniowa, or Polish Armaments Group. This united together Polish state-owned defence industry companies such as Huta Stalowa Wola SA and Buma Lebedi. Also in 2013, Poland signed an agreement to purchase 105 German Army Leopard 2A5 and 14 additional Leopard 2A4 tanks. The full order was finally completed in 2015. However, in 2014, Poland looked on as Russian forces invaded the Ukrainian-controlled Crimean Peninsula on 27th of February. Poland's subsequent emergency defence review following Russia's aggressive invasion concluded that her armed forces did not have enough military equipment, especially in main battle tanks and artillery guns. There was a real fear that Russian forces could conduct a rapid and successful invasion of Ukraine, resulting in the capitulation of its fledgling government. This move would clearly threaten Poland's border, and therefore NATO's eastern flank. At this point, Poland's obligation to NATO to develop a NATO standard armoured brigade was well established, with the arrival in 2002 of the first Leopard 2A4 main battle tanks, boosting the firepower of the Polish 10th Armoured Cavalry Brigade. Poland's Emergency Defence Review in 2014 resulted in the implementation of the Readiness Action Plan to cope with new security dangers posed by the Russian Federation, part of which was to increase military spending to 2% of GDP. In 2015, the final 28 Leopard 2A5 were delivered from Germany, giving Poland a combined main battle tank force of approximately 537 tanks. Unfortunately, the PT-91 Twardy in 2015 was regarded as obsolete and would need considerable modernisation. The Polish Land Forces ex-German Army 2A4 were practically outdated before they were even delivered, and at the very minimum required better armoured protection. The decision was taken to upgrade 128 of the 142 Leopard 2A4 to a modernisation standard Leopard 2PL. Unfortunately, delays in agreeing the final Leopard 2PL specifications and details of a manufacturing cooperation between ZM Buma Lebedi and Rheinmetall resulted in Polish Land Forces only receiving by the end of 2020 12 Leopard 2PL tanks. The 2A5 at the time in 2015 was still regarded as a very capable main battle tank. It was actually the first German variant to receive an improved armour protection, especially over the tank's frontal arc, with the turret front gaining a distinctive arrowhead shape. What should be noted, the 2A5 was first in service in Germany's armed forces in 1995. The German army in 2015 had been operating in a superior Leopard variant of the 2A6 since 2001, armed with a deadly accurate RH-120 L55 cannon. NATO in 2014 also identified Poland's potential risk to Putin's clear ambition to gain back previous Soviet bloc countries. In 2017, NATO established 4 enhanced forward presence battle groups based in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania and Poland. Since April 2014, US Army Europe and Africa have sent troops to Poland to provide a strong and visible show of strength and solidarity. This is the US Army's 3rd Armoured Brigade Combat Team, who are shown here officially encased in their colours at a range near Zagan in Poland to mark the undertaking of Atlantic Resolve 2017. This footage was recorded 31st of January 2017. The American troops are joined today by Polish land forces assigned to 34th Armoured Cavalry Brigade. The Polish troops at the time operated Leopard 2A5 main battle tanks. Less than 2 months for the first ever contingent of soldiers to deploy to Poland and officially form the NATO Enhanced Forward Present Battle Group Poland. Unlike Atlantic Resolve exercises, the battle group is a permanent presence and is led by a United States Army, supported by troops from United Kingdom, Romania and Croatia. The Polish 15th Mechanised Infantry Brigade was selected to deploy with NATO's battle group in Poland, operating the PT-91 Twardy and 2S-1 Gwozdika 122mm self-propelled howitzers. It was this weapon system, manufactured in many hundreds under Soviet license by Poland's Huta Stalowa Wola, better known as HSW, which ultimately led to the withdrawal from Polish Army service in the early 1990s of all its 2 standard models of towed howitzer gun artillery, the M1938 and M1955. Poland at the time operated as many as 600 of the 122mm self-propelled howitzers. The decision to withdraw from service the 122mm towed gun howitzer M1938 was due to age, maintenance costs, reduced mobility and high manpower demands. Besides, Polish forces were more than happy with the 2S-1 Gwozdika self-propelled howitzers. The Gwozdikas have a very clever and unusual design feature. They have the ability to cross water courses independently, handy when initiating shoot and scoot tactics. It should be noted, only the 2SM1 variant with amphibious kit can safely cross water courses. Also, their relatively compact design makes them easier to conceal in dug-in positions or dense forested areas. The 152mm gun howitzer M1955 was still a relatively modern towed howitzer, despite its 1950s design era. It has a solid, proven battlefield record with a number of countries. It has deployed over the years in at least 18 wars. The most recent is the ongoing Russo-Ukrainian War. Poland's decision to withdraw from Polish military service is likely due to a number of reasons, including lack of tooling to replace, for example, worn gun barrels and major parts. M1955 were never manufactured in Poland. Also a key decision to phasing out 152mm artillery shells and converting to NATO standard weapon systems would have been a major consideration, as was the overall age and condition of the artillery pieces, especially with increasing maintenance costs. There was a significant exception to the complete phasing out of 152mm shells, and that was the ongoing support and upgrading of Poland's 100 plus 152mm self-propelled gun howitzer called Dana, which solidified Poland's plan to operate highly mobile artillery systems. The first Dana entered Polish service in 1981 manufactured in Czechoslovakia as part of Warsaw Pact's integrated cross-border supply agreements. It was, and still is, an outstanding artillery system, which in the late 1970s, the wheeled Dana was a significant departure from contemporary self-propelled Soviet and Western-made self-propelled guns. However, the decision to remove the M1955, a frontline heavy artillery piece, would not have been taken lightly. But ultimately, it set Poland on a path to become one of the world's largest operators of self-propelled howitzer guns. The EFP battle group deployed in Poland in 2017, shown here during its historic welcoming ceremony, did at least alleviate some concerns raised by Polish military commanders of the threat posed by Russia. At the time, Putin would have been caught off guard, especially with the presence of United States armed forces. The Polish military viewed the EFP battle group as a golden chance to gain more time to further modernise Poland's military. One of the key driving factors to Poland's military modernisation came from a heavy manufacturing company, and specifically designed for a new self-propelled 155mm gun howitzer. This one project would eventually lead to an unexpected large-scale military manufacturing partnership with South Korea. As previously mentioned, Poland had built under licence hundreds of 2S1 Gwozdika 122mm self-propelled howitzers manufactured by Huta Stalowa Wola, better known as HSW. Poland's HSW would become fundamental in rearming Poland's land forces and are key to this video's story. The development of the eventually named AHS Crab began in 1997, designed by HSW. The first prototypes were assembled from a chassis from roots going back to the Soviet MTS tractors and parts from the Polish-developed PT-91 Tuardi tank, again with deep Soviet roots tracing back to T-72 main battle tanks. The AHS Crab turret and gun system was developed by BAE. Further prototypes were developed, but progress stalled and put on hold for several years due to financial reasons. In 2008 to 2013, with new funds in place, further prototype AHS Crabs were produced and tested by the Polish land forces. Also in 2008, HSW released a final design proposal for a 120mm self-propelled wheeled gun mortar called M20 Rack. The original designs included a HSW tracked chassis. This final wheel chassis, however, is based on and produced by Poland's Rosy-Mak SA in partnership with HSW. The design is very much in line with Poland's land forces artillery requirements for a highly mobile, rapidly deployable artillery system that would replace the 122mm Gwozdika Soviet-era self-propelled howitzer. On 27 February 2014, Russia invaded Crimea. The Polish government in 2014, recognising the slow progress of the AHS Crab's development and perhaps its use of outdated Soviet-designed equipment, entered talks with South Korean Hanwha-Tekwin, the manufacturer of K9 Thunder 155mm self-propelled howitzers. A deal was agreed to purchase 120 K9 Thunder chassis for the AHS Crab, with the first 24 to be delivered in 2017 and 96 to be built under licence in Poland in 2018 to 2022. However, given the sense of urgency, Poland received its first K9 chassis in June 2015, fitted with a British BAE Systems AS90M Braveheart turret, and at the time fitted with a Rheinmetall AG 52 caliber gun barrel, resulting in a fully fitted AHS Crab rolled out for testing in August 2015. The testing was a complete success, resulting in the first serial production AHS Crab rolled out from the HSW plant in April 2016. Since 2019, 52 caliber gun barrels are manufactured domestically by HSW. This dynamic, rapid and successful project partnership between Poland's HSW and South Korea's Hanwha-Tekwin did not go unnoticed by the Polish government. Poland's overall military modernisation plans were now moving at pace. Polish government on 24 February 2022 once again woke up to news of Russian troops pouring over the borders of Ukraine. Poland's High Command were deeply concerned but not surprised. It was clear from the very start it was a full-scale invasion, and doubts were raised in Poland for the ability for Ukraine to hold out against such an onslaught. Russian airstrikes and a ground invasion were launched on the northern fronts from Belarus towards the capital Kyiv, a southern front from Crimea and an eastern front from Donbass and towards Kharkiv. However, Russian troops retreated from the north and the outskirts of Kyiv by April 2022 after encountering stiff resistance and logistical challenges. Poland, satisfied Ukraine could hold out, possibly only in the short term, made the strategic decision to directly support Ukraine. In late May 2022, the Polish government donated 18 of its prized AHS Crabs to Ukraine, but also secretly donated another 54 Crabs and support vehicles. These were actually already promised to Polish regiments, and in several cases were already integrated and fully operational within Poland's Land Army regiments. Poland also agreed to manufacture and sell to Ukraine an additional 60 AHS Crabs, in a deal worth 3 billion zlotys, or US $700 million. The donation and sales of one of Poland's newest key military assets could have put Poland's modernisation plans back by several years and no doubt upset Poland's military commanders. However, the very successful Crab project partnership between Poland's HSW and South Korea's Hwang Techwin now brings us back to here, 12 December 2022. At the barracks of the reactivated 1st Manchurian Artillery Brigade. This is actually one of the brigades that was originally promised AHS Crabs. Here, Deputy Prime Minister Blazczak stands in front of 24 used South Korean-made K9 Thunder self-propelled howitzers, which is officially handing over to the brigade. The K9 behind him are the first of delivery of a landmark deal to purchase K9 Thunders, agreed sometime in late July 2024. The South Koreans have already shown outstanding manufacturing and logistics capabilities with support for the Crab, achieving on-time and in full delivery deadlines. Recognised with a backdrop to the Russian-Ukraine war, the urgency for Poland to replace its donated AHS Crabs. The South Koreans selected the newest 24 K9 Thunder in service with the Republic of Korea Land Forces, and we believe with the input of Polish engineers, installed Poland's Topaz automatic fire control system. This enabled Homar-K to expedite these first K9 Thunders to Poland within an incredible 5 months time frame. Deputy Prime Minister Blazczak added, under the agreement we reached in July, we'll be acquiring 672 K9 howitzers for the Polish Army. The first batch will comprise the same version of the howitzers being handed over today. After that, we'll be receiving the K9 howitzers in a so-called PL version, modernised, more advanced and even more modern. Part of the agreement also includes ammunition, logistics and technical support from South Korean arms maker Hanwha Defence. 2022 turned out to be a significant year for Poland. The Russian invasion of Ukraine on February 28, 2024 resulted in further large-scale military orders, one of which was very surprising. More on this shortly. To fully understand these 2024 orders, I just need to go back a little to the United States Army military exercises in Poland and its leadership of Poland's NATO enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group Poland. The Americans after 2014 began to regularly deploy Abrams M1A2 Set V2 main battle tanks to Poland. The Polish military were able to get a very close look at its capabilities, and they liked what they saw. However, it wasn't until the US Army began to deploy around the year 2020 Set V3 main battle tanks, probably the absolute pinnacle of a modern main battle tank. This particular V3 version really heightened Poland's military commander's interest. It took less than 8 weeks after the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine for the then Minister of National Defence, Mariusz Błaszczak, to sign a contract in April 22 for the purchase of 250 M1A2 Set V3 Abrams main battle tanks at a cost of $4.75 billion US. This contract included the supply of M88A2 Hercules recovery vehicles. Unfortunately, there was a major catch. General Dynamics Land Systems, their Abrams manufacturer, was unable to supply the first of this very highly technically advanced main battle tank for at least 2 years. The Polish forces had at this point in April 2022 had already generously begun to donate its older models of PT-91 and T-72M1 and even some of its Leopard A4 main battle tanks. All were rapidly shipped across the Polish border to support the Ukrainian tanker crews in the defence against Russian invasion forces. A second deal was agreed with General Dynamics Land Systems to supply recently withdrawn from service 116 United States Marine Corps M1A1 main battle tanks. These specifically are upgraded M1A1 FEP or Firepower Enhanced Package. Although relatively recently deactivated in 2021, they did require recommissioning, resulting in a delay on delivery. The first batch wouldn't be delivered until June 2023. The final delivery of 47 M1A1 FEP on 26th of June 2024 marked the completion of the full order of 116 of these main battle tanks. As part of the Abrams tank procurement deal, Polish Land Forces troops at least were able to begin advanced training in an arrangement involving the leasing of US Army spare M1A2 SEP V2 main battle tanks. These tanks arrived during the late half of 2022. Poland military commanders highly concerned they still didn't have enough firepower to defend against the belligerent Russian land army, resulted in Poland once again looking eastwards in a somewhat surprising move, especially for General Dynamics Land Systems. It resulted in Polish government defence officials approaching South Korea's Hyundai Rotem. This in August 2022 resulted in an agreement to procure 180 K2 main battle tanks, valued at approximately $3.4 billion US. The South Korean company was once again able to exceed its delivery time frames and deliver the first 10 K2 main battle tanks in December 2022, just 4 months after the initial order was placed. Indeed, Hyundai Rotem are on track to supply all 180 of the K2 main battle tanks by year end 2025. In another landmark deal with Hyundai Rotem, in June 2024, a further order to purchase another 180 K2 tanks was agreed, with a potential option to manufacture under license an undisclosed number of K2 main battle tanks in Poland. It's understood that Poland intends to operate 1,000 K2 tanks by 2030, with a large number produced in Poland as an advanced PL variant. In the meantime, General Dynamics Land Systems delivery times of its M1A2 SEP V3 Abrams tanks began to slip, resulting in the first delivery of just 28 M1A2 SEP V3 tanks delivered January 19th, 2025. That's over 2.5 years after the order was placed. The Polish Land Forces on 31st of March 2023 were quick to show their new K2 Black Panther main battle tanks and the K9 self-propelled gun howitzers working together and demonstrating the weapon's firepower at the Polish Homar-K live firing facility. This important milestone was also an effective visual display of Poland's growing arsenal of heavy weaponry. So what are the next steps for Poland's military? Well, there are a few plans we know about. Poland in 2025 plans to spend 4.7% of GDP on defence, the highest level within NATO countries. Without a doubt, the military partnerships with South Korea's defence industries will grow, with new weapons development and updates to weapon systems already in various design stages. One example is the K9 self-propelled gun howitzers in conjunction with South Korea's Hanwha Techwin will continue to evolve the K9, with a series of future upgrades planned over the next 10 years, including a fully autonomous unmanned variant. The Polish Armaments Group, founded in 2013, will oversee the upgrades in Poland, using its vast interconnected manufacturing network. Weapon systems already ordered are 218 units of the Homar-K, a specific modified Polish variant of South Korea's K2-39 Chunmoo rocket artillery system. Some units have already arrived in Poland and have received retrofitting with Polish-specific components. Poland has also ordered 400 K153 Legwan, a Polish variant of South Korea's Rakot KLTV tactical armoured vehicle. The overall fact is, an increasing amount of weapons systems are now designed and manufactured in Poland. Poland's technical skill base and advanced manufacturing processes are continuing to expand, helped in part by manufacturing complex foreign-made weapon systems as part of license agreements. Poland's overall aim to remove Soviet-designed weapon systems by 2030 has changed slightly. The generous donations of tanks, infantry fighting vehicles and self-propelled artillery systems to Ukraine means some Soviet-era systems will remain in service probably a little beyond 2030. Specifically, the 900 plus BWP-1/1D infantry fighting vehicle will remain in service until its replacements, such as the Polish Borsuk infantry fighting vehicle and joint Finnish-Polish range of KTO Rosomak infantry fighting vehicles, are manufactured in large enough numbers to withdraw the remaining Soviet-era IFVs. The ever-reliable 2S1 Gwozdika self-propelled howitzer, now with less than 200 remaining in Polish service, after some were sold to fellow operators Ukraine. These 200 units for now will be retained and modernised. They will and are receiving the latest Topaz FCS automated fire control system designed by Poland's WB Electronics. So let's begin to look at some of the numbers of military hardware mentioned in this video. These will be fully delivered and all in service by 2030. The Polish rearming numbers will make Poland a European NATO member military superpower, just behind Turkey. Please remember, this is not a full list of Poland's ambitious rearming programme. So let's talk main battle tanks. Poland have currently ordered a total of 360 K2 Black Panther main battle tanks. As you can see in the video clip, the Polish have already received some of these tanks after Polish tank crews deployed to South Korea for training. Poland intend to manufacture under licence 500 K2PL Black Panther variants. It's Poland's ambition to eventually operate 1,000 of these tanks. However, by the end of 2030, Poland will operate 860 K2 main battle tanks. Next is the Abrams main battle tanks. Poland will have in service 250 of the M182 SEP V3. This is the very latest variant and greatest Abrams main battle tank ever built. They will also retain and operate 116 of the ex-United States Marine Corps M1A1 FEP main battle tanks. Next are Poland's Land Forces Leopard main battle tanks. The oldest model first was a fleet of 128 Leopard 2A4s. However, 14 were donated to Ukraine. Currently, in early 2025, most of the remaining 114 units are upgraded to the Leopard 2PL standard. They have received an electric turret drive with gun stabilisation, which replaces the hydraulic system, as fitted to the Leopard 2A5. The 2PL can fire all the latest types of ammunition and is fitted with the very latest Polish designed and manufactured optics. The newer Leopard, Poland's fleet of its 105 Leopard 2A5s, although good, are now less battlefield effective and not as well armoured as the older model, the updated 2A4 to the 2PL variant. There is some speculation that the 2A5s will be upgraded to a modified 2PL standard in the future. However, 2A4 upgrades, although highly successful, have been subject to delays due to some unexpected wear and tear deterioration of some of the units. This has resulted in considerably higher overall project costs, from 2.4 billion Polish zloty to 3.29 billion Polish zloty, which equates to approximately $185 million US dollars. That sum would have purchased 100 fourth generation K2 Black Panther tanks. The final main battle tank is the PT-91 Twardy. Poland currently operates 206 PT-91 main battle tanks. This was after donating 60 to Ukraine. The Polish PT-91 fleet is a mixture of three incremental variant stages representing modernization programs over the last 20 years or so. A few PT-91 prototypes were produced relatively recently by Homar-K, including this fascinating, heavily armoured PT-91M2. It's unlikely the company attempts to revitalise the interest in what is basically a battle tank based on the Soviet T-72 main battle tank design will ever succeed. I may be wrong, but by 2030 the PT-91 will likely be mothballed, sold or donated. It's time to look at the numbers of Poland's self-propelled artillery to be in place by 2030. Again, it's not a full list, just those mentioned in this video. We start with a 155mm AHS Crab self-propelled tracked gun howitzer. In my humble opinion, this is the weapon system that was instrumental in energising Poland's journey to become a European military superpower. Although production of this weapon system had switched priority to manufacturing 54 units for Ukraine, plus a donation of 54 units, Poland is back on track to manufacture AHS Crabs for her own armed forces. The projected operational number for Poland in 2030 will be 288 units. However, 48 of these units will be of the new variant, the Crab 2. Its main feature will be an automatic ammunition reloading mechanism. It's very likely further orders for the Crab 2 will be placed for delivery beyond 2030. Next we have the K9A1. Poland in 2022 agreed its intent to order 672 K9 155mm self-propelled howitzers. The initial orders supplied by Hand War Defence or K9A1. Some were withdrawn from South Korean service to rapidly supply Poland. As part of a framework agreement, South Korea and Poland will produce the Polish K9PL standard. Poland shall, under a manufacturing license agreement, begin manufacturing the K9PL variant in 2026. The K9A1 deliveries from South Korea will be updated to the K9PL standard. Order numbers could be increased, but on paper at least, Poland will operate a joint total of 570 K9A1 and PL standard by 2030, with another 100 delivered to Poland's armed forces by 2032. The entire K9 fleet could then be fully converted to the PL standard by 2035. The ever reliable 2S1 Gwozdika self-propelled howitzer, currently numbering 200, will likely remain in service in 2030. However, its future is rather bleak and will be withdrawn in the early 2030s. The M20K rack will probably number 122 units, the same number in operation today. However, Poland's defence manufacturer Huta Stalowa Wola in 2020 has produced a modernised rack M120 120mm mortar on a Borsuk tracked chassis. If adopted by Poland's military, it would see an increase in the overall number of rack M120 self-propelled systems. Poland's ageing fleet of Dana 152mm self-propelled gun howitzer are receiving extended life modifications. The variant Dana M will give the Dana howitzer system a 20-year extended life. The modifications are extensive, time-consuming and costly. It is expected by 2030 there will be a total of 111 Dana systems, with a majority still operating as the older upgrade standard Dana T. Poland is also heavily investing in multiple rocket and tactical missile systems. Here, the previously mentioned Homar-K, South Korean K239 Chunmu variant, will number 290 by 2030. But it's also important to quickly mention orders for an incredible 506 Homar-A. It's a variant of the American M142 HIMARS. The majority of the M142 launcher will be fitted to the Polish manufactured Yelts truck. The fully operational introduction, with completion of all orders of the Homar-K and Homar-A self-propelled multiple rocket launchers, puts in doubt the future of Poland's older systems, such as the 29 units of Czech-made RM-70 and Poland's home-produced 75 units of WR-40 Langusta, both via the Polish-produced unguided 122mm M21 Phoenix rockets. They will for now remain operational in Poland's land forces. This final section concentrates on armoured personnel carriers, starting with the Soviet-era range of BWP-1 infantry fighting vehicles and reconnaissance vehicles. An estimated 900 BWP-1 will still be in service in 2030, with at least 300 Soviet-era legacy reconnaissance and command vehicles, such as this BRDM-2 amphibious armoured scout car. These Soviet models will mostly be replaced in the early 2030s by 1,000 of the all-new Polish BWP Borsuk infantry fighting vehicles and 400 Borsuk specialised units in at least 5 versions. And finally we have the KTO Rozimak. This very adaptable infantry fighting vehicle will be produced in at least 12 variants, including command, reconnaissance, ambulance and armoured personnel carriers. It is likely that over 1,000 vehicles will be in service with Poland's land forces by 2030. One final mention must go to the South Korean K151 Reykholt. This is a prime example of Poland's ongoing military partnership with South Korea. They will supply 400 of these armoured tactical vehicles as a K153 Legwan/L. So it is now time to reveal the total numbers of the military vehicles mentioned just in this video. There are many more in development, and a large number are currently in production, such as radar, tank recovery, logistics, armoured utility, track command and heavy transport vehicles. All of these will add several thousands more modern military systems to Poland's ever-increasing armed forces. The total number of these vehicles and weapon systems reviewed today is 7,636 units. All are planned to be in service by 2030. Poland's yearly defence spending budget from 2025 is expected to reach 30 billion euros a year. Poland plans to employ 300,000 military personnel in her armed forces, including the expansion of cyber defence forces and significant investments in drone technology and unmanned systems operator personnel. Poland by 2030 will firmly secure her position as the third largest military in NATO, making her a European military superpower. The United States and Turkey take first and second place. However, by 2030, Poland will be the largest NATO member operator of self-propelled artillery systems. And will also operate one of the most modern and lethal main battle tank fleets in the world. Poland by 2030 will cement her place as a European military superpower. One thing is for sure, the days of seeing long lines of railcar trains transporting Poland's huge stocks of Soviet-era military hardware will soon be confined to the past. Thanks for watching.